Games have always been about wish fulfillment, normally very violent wish fulfillment, mostly fantasy or sci-fi settings with incredibly beautiful people that don't relate much to actual reality or the people who play them, creating a necessary disconnect between the games we play and any psychological meaning someone might try to draw from you playing it. But more often these days, when and where games have been set as something closer to our lived experience, especially Rockstar's games, made for your average looking out-of-shape person who's been beaten down by society to rampage through a consequence-free recognizable environment, tapping into the most potent form of catharsis in modern times, running over minorities and stereotypes with your car. So when Rockstar turned their attention to making a similar game set in an American high school, it was quite the step back in scope. After all, school is an institutional setting where freedom is rationed by hall passes and your agency is hamstrung by the inconvenient reality of being a minor. Reliving high school isn't high on the list of reminiscent power fantasies most of us have, since high school exists in most adult memories as either the lowest point from which they've spent decades recovering from, or their sad peak before the slow descent into mortgage payments, divorce, and increasingly concerning medical test results. Japanese games transform high school into romantic visual novel playgrounds, where the formerly ignored rectify the issue by sleeping with every woman who used to ignore them, while the Western take, as personified by Bully, skips straight to the I'll show them all revenge fantasy that lurks in the darker quarters of many a former teenager's psyche. Bully exists in this strange liminal space of game design, where accuracy has been sacrificed on the altar of emotional verisimilitude. There are no weekends off, students have all been neatly sorted into their respective clique with all the nuance of a 1980s teen movie that's been stripped for parts. Teachers live up to every nasty rumor students whisper about them, and every girl you take interest in will eventually fall for your nice guy act. That peculiar gaming trope where basic human decency is treated as an irresistible aphrodisiac. It's less a simulation and more a fever dream of high school, the kind of environment that exists only in the mind of someone who's been out of school just long enough to mythologize their experience. It's so singularly focused on living the dream of making everyone you didn't like pay that it lacks all the nuance of the setting beyond that. A school is also a touchy thing to depict video game violence around, so this private school is dangerous in that sanitized way that only fiction directed by corporate can imagine. Threatening enough to justify escalating violence, but carefully constructed to avoid any actual contemporary school issues that might disturb the delicate sensibilities of parents or rating boards. No racial tensions bubble beneath the surface, no mass shootings interrupt your class schedule, no overworked teachers battle burnout while managing classrooms of 40+ students, just the comfortably cartoonish violence of wedgies and swirlies that wouldn't frighten the ESRB beyond a T rating. What's left is essentially Grand Theft Auto freshman year, a stripped-down version of Rockstar's more ambitious games that feels increasingly anachronistic with each passing season, leaving us with a peculiar time capsule of mid-2000s adolescent power fantasy that seems almost charmingly naive in its understanding of teenage and institutional cruelty. Modern bullying has evolved such that the game's simplistic social ecosystem now reads less like satire and more like wistful nostalgia for a time when you could identify your bullies before they destroyed your reputation anonymously online. Jimmy, a young Vin Diesel cosplayer, is ditched by his mom and new stepfather at a private school so they can enjoy their year-long honeymoon cruise together. They must have been in a hurry, since Jimmy arrives without any luggage and nothing but the clothes on his back and several behavioral issues.
I can't believe this.
You must be the Hopkins boy.
Where'd you come from?
Jimmy's right to be afraid of the secretary's sudden appearance. The academy's front gate never opened to let her through.
Done a lot of naughty things, haven't you? Vandalism, graffiti, bad language, violent conduct, disrespecting staff. Oh, I'm scared of you, Hopkins.
I have a hard time believing a private school would accept Jimmy with a record like that, at least not without a significant amount of money changing hands. And given the car Jimmy's stepfather was driving, I can't see that being the case.
Guess what time it is? Yep, time for a beatdown.
Bulworth Academy is unusually violent for a private school. It's a place that seems to operate less like an educational institution and more like a minimum security juvenile detention facility where the guards have all simultaneously decided to take an extended coffee break. This isn't bullying in any recognizable contemporary sense, but rather a Lord of the Flies scenario being enacted by teenagers in inexplicable degrees of organizational hierarchy and territorial control that would make actual street gangs nod in professional respect. Here we have Jimmy Hopkins, fresh meat by any standard, immediately swarmed by a trio of bullies who attack him with the focused determination of hired muscle collecting on a gambling debt. Despite having no established history beyond making eye contact, actual bullying tends to function with a perverse internal logic, targeting specific physical vulnerabilities, establishing social dominance, or addressing the bully's own psychological insecurities through the humiliation of selected victims who typically have some characteristic that makes them deserving of torment. And after Jimmy demonstrates he's actually a tough kid who knows how to fight, most bullies would give him a wide berth, since they're after easy targets that won't resist. But no matter how many times Jimmy transforms their face into an abstract impressionist painting, there's always someone else wanting a piece of him. After a savage beating where you can pin someone to the ground and beat their face in or kick them with your foot, Jimmy can then pull off finishing moves like Indian burns and rubbing spit in their face.
Hey, you're the new kid.
This is a private school. There's going to be new kids throughout the year. Jimmy isn't so fascinating that Gary would have already heard of him and been waiting in the dorm with a year-long plan for taking over the school already in the works. Jimmy receives a dorm room that is about 10 times bigger than your average student dorm. He doesn't even have to split it with anyone.
I see you've met the dorm's mascot. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Femboy, the girliest boy in school.
Well, that's a line that shows this game's age. Nowadays, the femboy would be in high demand among his peers.
Look, I gotta unpack. Would you guys mind getting out of here?
What do you have to unpack? You didn't bring a bag and you just put on the school uniform that was given to you. You can beg bullies to leave you alone and then pay them money. This is a gameplay feature you will never use again once past this tutorial, owing to how easy it is to outrun them or beat them up.
Oh man, there's that weird chick Eunice. Let's have some fun with her.
Oh my god!
How exactly is this messing with Eunice? She benefited twice. First when Jimmy retrieved her stolen chocolates, and afterward when she forced a makeout session on Jimmy. The game's social hierarchy has been assembled with all the careful attention to contemporary teenage culture that one might expect from developers whose understanding of adolescence appears to have been primarily informed by watching The Breakfast Club on a badly deteriorating VHS tape. Over here we have the nerds, the traditional walking punchlines of any high school movie, and who are all apparently on their way to STEM careers, though there is something darkly prescient about the portrayal as vindictive outcasts nursing fantasies of future dominance. Meanwhile, the greasers, anachronistic refugees from a 1950s socio-economic reality, their presence in a mid-2000s private school setting makes about as much sense as a character from Happy Days accidentally wandering under the set of Mean Girls. The jocks, supposedly the apex predators in the social ecosystem, receive characterization so thin, you could use it as transparent refrigerator wrap. Their entire personality is distilled down to, me throw ball good, me hate think things. The setting is rounded out by the rich kids, who are just affluent blue bloods who should probably be attending much nicer schools. Perhaps most telling is who's missing from the school's social groups. The complete absence of goths and their nihilism, metalheads insisting all of their forms of music are inferior, potheads assessing every corner of the school for a teacher's line of sight, slackers elevating apathy to an art form, and any of the dozens of other micro-communities that actually populated high school during this period. Due to the setting, going to class every day had to be addressed, but for enjoyment's sake, class was limited to 2 classes per day, each subject being a quick minigame, usually some flavor of press the button in time to the prompt or draw lines on the screen. You earn upgrades or new abilities from passing them, but you can skip them and focus on the actual meat of the game if you want, since your grades don't actually matter.
This place is full of bullies and maniacs.
Nonsense! That's just school spirit. Hijinks. Why, in my day, we felt nothing of castrating the new boys.
Isn't that a double standard? You don't see Jimmy's behavior as part of that school spirit of hijinks and hazing. Who carries a slingshot around this day and age? When I was in high school in the early 2000s, being caught with a kid's slingshot would have ended your social life since it's such a little kid's toy.
I was just telling Petey here about my idea to take over the school. I mean, my plan for us to take over the school.
All of you will graduate in just a couple years. What does taking over the school do for you?
Come on, Jimmy, let's go see how good you are with this new slingshot I heard you had.
Jimmy getting a slingshot is news that travels around school. Do you receive reports on every student who keeps a straw from the cafeteria for spitballs? The first part of Gary's plan for taking over the school has Jimmy sitting on a tree branch and shooting rocks at the football players, injuring them enough to have them lying on the field and likely requiring medical attention. And they're wearing their pads. How strong can this slingshot be?
I've got a good idea for some fun. Let's go out and torment someone really helpless and unfortunate. That homeless guy.
This message brought to you by Republican policy. This lot was empty just a second ago and the entrance is on the other side. You can't do a wide establishing shot and then have characters teleport in.
Your dad does live on campus. You jerk! Ow! Let's leave this guy to his welfare payments.
2 insults and Gary has had enough of torturing the old vet and runs off, leaving Jimmy alone with him, and the two of them then reach an agreement to trade old radios in return for teaching Jimmy combat moves, the first of which is on the shop class roof nearby, which Jimmy instinctively knows the location of.
Just get out of here, kid.
Why should I?
Because otherwise I'll kill you.
How is this guy getting away with living on school property and threatening to kill students?
I see you guys are getting along as usual.
I'm just toughening him up.
Ow.
Turning him into a man or a woman or something.
Gary isn't going to win many Republican voters with stances like that.
Listen, Jimmy, I need a favor. Bucky went to the auto shop to get some parts for his science projects. He hasn't come back yet. I think he might be in trouble.
Why not go to a teacher if you think your friend is in danger at the shop class instead of begging Jimmy to go? What makes him the go-to for helping nerds? The next mission begins with Jimmy waltzing through the girls' dorm for no real reason and listens in on the cheerleader Mandy bullying Beatrice over her school notes, and Beatrice uses Jimmy creeping in the girls' dorm to force him to retrieve the notes for her, since she'll tell the whole school that Jimmy is a perv who breaks into the girls' dorm if he doesn't. He brought this on himself because she's right.
You can't just steal things from me!
Unfortunately for you, my pig ugly friend, that is exactly what I can do.
Why did Mandy steal your notes anyway? She buys early test sheets according to a later mission, so she wouldn't be using them for study. A mission that began with Jimmy slinking around the girls' dorm, next has him sneak into the girls' shower at the gym to break into Mandy's locker and make her vomit all over the floor with a stink bomb, then returning to make out with Beatrice back at the dorm.
First you rescued my notes from Mandy, and then we fell in love, and
Oh,
you brought me flowers and wrote me poetry and showed this kinder, sensitive side that soon the whole world is gonna know about.
Jimmy is so worried about being seen as a decent person who respects women that he's willing to steal back Beatrice's diary from the teacher who confiscated it rather than let it come to light.
You'll vote for me, won't you?
Yeah, not a chance.
What if I pay you?
Ernest is a real politician after all. Ernest is attacked by the jocks during his campaign speech, and Jimmy's hired to protect him by shooting them with a slingshot. Meanwhile, not a single student in the audience notices the eggs and rocks flying over their heads. I should have the option of allowing the jocks to do what they will with Ernest, giving the suspiciously fascist banners flanking him, and his speech calling every girl in the school a bimbo. Speaking of fascists, Jesus Christ, Gary's Halloween costume would never fly at any school in the 2000s. Nowadays, who knows? The Halloween mission is comprised of several mini-missions where other people want Jimmy to pull their pranks for them. What exactly do you get out of handing a carton of eggs to someone and asking them to egg 3 students for you while you don't even watch? One of them even wants you to set off a fireworks explosion amid a group of students, possibly horribly injuring them. The final prank is Gary's, and it involves feeding Chad's dog rancid meat, which will make it relieve itself 5 seconds later so they can put it in a bag and set it on fire in the school outside the teacher's lounge. Old-fashioned prank aside, I'm more curious at how this student is able to bring his pit bull to school. Gary claims to have discovered something in the school's basement that he can't wait to show Jimmy. It ends up being a blood sport arena for children, and Gary tricked Jimmy into coming along to fight Russell. But how did Gary get all the other students to show up without alerting Jimmy to the plan? And what route did they take to get here? Jimmy had to unlock several doors and temporarily cool down a boiler to get past boiling steam.
I'm taking over this school, and you're just a liability. See you around, moron!
Does Gary go into hiding after this stunt? He has to be sleeping at the school dorm like the other students and going to class. But he's treated like the goddamn Joker, and then is a no-show until the end of the game.
But I want you to stop bullying weak kids.
Why?
Because there are a bunch of kids around this place who need a beating, and you're picking on the few who don't. So I want you to leave me and him alone.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Bad Russell.
And that's all it takes to change a life. I'm surprised Russell was ever a bully since he can be reasoned with so easily. Jimmy is invited to come to the boxing club in town to spar against the rich kids. Once he wins their tournament, they won't give him the trophy since only people whose parents are on the board are allowed to enter. So instead, they give him the old beach house next to the lighthouse. Beachfront real estate is one hell of a runner-up prize compared with a trophy. The English professor is drunk at the job, and Hattrick is about to get him fired by going to the headmaster, so he enlists Jimmy to get rid of all the booze he has stashed around school grounds where students could easily find it, such as the girls' restroom, which has its own disturbing implications. The art teacher rewards Jimmy with a DSLR camera for collecting all the booze. Then she bangs a homeless guy during school hours.
I've got performance anxiety.
Get used to it, kid. You're a man. It's all downhill from here, my friend.
I was once taken to a roller rink along with all the other neighborhood kids by a man who would later be arrested for being a pedo. And I feel like I was in less danger then than Jimmy is inside this school.
Let me see. I need some meat from Yum Yum Market.
What kind of meat? Beef? Poultry? Fish? Meat covers all of them.
Go, take my bike. It's that fine machine out there by the school gates.
How do you bike to work and stay so corpulent?
Some ruffians took it upon themselves to steal my Grottos and Gremlins character sheets and won't return them.
Why not just have your friends remake their character sheets?
I need you to do something for me.
What a surprise.
I'm last in line, and this movie means everything to me. I'm gonna get terrible seats. Can you please get rid of all these people for me? Please, Jimmy?
There's 6 people in line ahead of you at this theater. Calm your rich tits down. There's plenty of seats.
Smash them! Smash them all! Old Bullwoodville's full of them. Please, I'll even pay you.
What other tiny things like these garden gnomes offend you that you would hire a child to go around town smashing them? You might want to send Jimmy to burn down the grocery store, since there's a whole lot of Keebler Elf products there.
Me and the champs were planning a little revenge hit on old Hattrick. We don't like what he did to that old Soak Galloway. A chap can have a drink if he bloody hell wants to.
Am I about to commit a hate crime? This is a bunch of Republican kids planning an assault on a black man.
Are you English? Well, no, I just speak this way because I'm very insecure. You see, my father is a self-made man, so I pretend to be old money, but in fact, I'm really nouveau riche.
Insecurity breeds defensiveness, so an insecure person wouldn't calmly explain their insecurities to a random stranger. That's a sign of someone who's moved past them.
You go get some eggs and meet me and the chaps back at my house.
Have you seen the price of eggs recently? You may as well throw gold bricks through his windows.
Is it true you said I was inbred? No, because first cousins is legal, my friend. Legal.
Turns out Tad can actually display insecurity and defensiveness, but only once Gary starts making up things Jimmy never said about him. Also, Tad described his family as nouveau riche due to his father making it big recently, so why would his father be inbreeding like the old money of this town?
Guess you want to kill Gary now that he's turned most of school against you, and got those rich kids to throw eggs at you.
Gary'll get what's coming to him.
Maybe you could go and look for Gary at school if he's going to keep causing problems for you. What exactly could you do to deal with Gary other than beat him up? Why do the rich kids keep going to all this trouble to keep plastic trophies out of Jimmy's hands? They even take it to the beach house they gave him earlier in lieu of awarding him a boxing trophy.
How did everything work out with those eggs?
Do you normally ask customers how things worked out with their purchases? You're selling food, not cars. Also, what happened to your Chinese accent?
Hello, can I help you find any... I hope you had fun with your purchase.
That jerk Tad? You know, his parents are at a party at my boss's house right now. If you wanted a revenge thing, now would be a good time.
I guess I'll need some more eggs then.
Ah, yes, you got it.
Thanks.
The shopkeeper for the Asian market suggests Jimmy go get revenge by egging Tad's home while his dad is away at his boss's party, even giving him free eggs. Free eggs! He's rich! Also, the shop owner is now liable. The biology teacher called Jimmy in because apparently the rich kids are sliding him by having the same plant on display in their social club, and he's so upset he's willing to enlist a student to destroy it for him. Like, who the hell cares enough about the science teacher to mock him by owning the same rare plant? Yo, this plant frickin' moves when you spray it, and roars when it dies. Should I really be killing this miracle of nature?
So how do I do it, Pete? Do what? Beat those rich kids into submission.
Why? Just ignore them like you're ignoring Gary.
No, what you gotta do is you gotta beat one of them publicly. You gotta prove to them you're better than their best man. Why don't you box that dumb jerk Biff?
Pete comes up with a plan of beating Biff in the ring to make the rich kids submit. This is the only plan Jimmy ever employs, and he will need Pete to think of it every single time. And apparently Biff wasn't the leader of the rich kids, and this blonde guy Darby is. Pete should have recommended beating him instead.
And Gary got them to pick that fight, so maybe you'll show him as well.
Gary's an even bigger problem. He'll have to wait.
That's good logic. Allow the bigger problem to grow and fester while you deal with smaller, inconsequential matters.
Well, you know who Johnny Vincent is, though, don't you?
No, and I don't care.
He's head of the Greaser Clique. Get friendly with him, and he can help you get to Gary.
Is Gary being protected by someone? The guy is just a student at the school. It can't be that hard to get to him.
She's with that rich kid Gord. I know she is.
How do you know?
Will you find out for me?
You don't normally take such an issue to a total stranger, especially one who just took over the rich kid's clique and is therefore technically your enemy. The plan for punishing Gordy has Jimmy attacking him and leading him and his friends to a warehouse that serves as a BMX course so Johnny and his boys can throw firecrackers at them. This plan of course hinges on Gordy not recognizing his clique's new leader attacking him, and then not leaving the warehouse since they're not locked in.
Some candy and some sedatives. And for the sedatives, don't buy them. Just look for them in the trash.
The lunch lady wants Jimmy to help her date rape the unwilling science teacher by finding sedatives in the trash around town and putting them in chocolate she'll give to him on their date. Let me say that again. The lunch lady wants Jimmy to help her date rape an unwilling man by sedating him with drugs found in the trash. This goes way beyond childhood mischief and into the all-caps holy shit territory. Even GTA doesn't have any mission that goes this far.
Well, you know what you kids are like. You see a beautiful couple out on a date, and you're bound to do anything to ruin it.
This is what you get for creating a school institution without weekends off, with students who'll ditch class just to commit abuse on teachers out on a date. But honestly, we should allow them to stop this atrocity because that man is in danger.
I'll give you $5 and some comics if you help me get my stuff back from that punk!
The punk stole one comic, and in return for getting it back, you'll give Jimmy multiple comics plus $5. Those economics don't work out, since you're more in the red rewarding Jimmy than just letting the thief get away. A drunken Santa who raves like a lunatic about Greenland and flying reindeer also complains about kids bullying him. And that's enough for bleeding heart Jimmy, who earlier told the greasers he wasn't a charity case, to go and beat up multiple people on the word of someone who clearly isn't all there. Maybe the little person at the carnival has a right to be concerned with bigotry at Bullworth, because this mission is another hate crime, which is wild that this game has two of them that I can point to. Bad Santa wants Jimmy to beat up a group of little people working as elves at another Santa's photo shoot, which Jimmy happily does, then photographs little children sitting in a drunk pervert's lap in a back alley. Johnny continues to target anyone he believes Lola is cheating on him with, even one of the nerds. Jimmy finds both Algie and Chad flirting with Lola, and instead of helping Johnny get them like he was ordered to, he helps them escape. Why make such a distinction with these two after you help Johnny give Gordy the business? It's the same thing.
Chad, honey, listen, it's just $100. That's nothing to a man of your means.
I can easily predict what sort of post this girl would be making on Instagram in about 15 years. Despite sitting on the back and slingshotting rocks to the chasing greasers, Johnny doesn't learn that Jimmy helped Algie and Chad escape.
Those grease monkeys are making life very difficult for Gord.
Did you guys happen to hear that Jimmy was part of the group that beat up Gordy? Weird how he never mentioned that.
So what do you want me to do?
Send them a message all over their dirty little slum.
Why should I?
Because you're the boss.
Exactly. I'm the boss, and I'll go send the message.
Jimmy is going to send a message to the greasers over the thing he helped them do. After beating Johnny in a bike race that Lola instigated, Jimmy kisses Lola right behind Johnny's back like he isn't aware how much of a psycho Johnny is, and that Lola is a slut who wants boys to fight over her.
Now Johnny and his boys won't even speak to me.
Boys can get really jealous when they find out you've been kissing another boy.
It wasn't like that. I'm not like that.
You kissed Jimmy in just the other mission, and were prying $100 out of Chad before that.
Maybe you could get them back for me?
You want me to steal your stuff back from a bloodthirsty mob of angry greaseballs?
I'd be very grateful, Jimmy. Very grateful.
Lola wants Jimmy to steal all of her stuff back from the greasers' hangout in the old tenement since they won't talk to her right now. Jimmy agrees because he's stupid and horny and knows Lola treats all men like this. In any other game, Norton's giant hammer would have killed Jimmy, but since kids can't die in video games, it has the same effect as being hit with a Nerf bat.
I'm like Helen of Troy.
So there's gonna be a big fight? A winner-take-all sort of thing?
Yes, everyone's involved apart from you. I'm Helen of Troy, and you're more interested in boys called Troy.
Gay students don't exist in this school, Lola. They're another one of those missing peer groups. Johnny shows up to kill Jimmy, but the cops disrupt the rumble, and Jimmy chases Johnny to the garbage dump where Pete is just hanging out for some reason like they planned this and asks Jimmy to help him reach the crane controls so he can switch it on and pull Johnny's bike out from under him. You don't need an electromagnet to knock someone off a bicycle. I do it all the time in game when I need a ride.
What about Gary? I haven't seen him, but whenever I hear somebody say I used to be a girl and had a sex change, or that my mother slept with Crabblesnitch to get me in here, I think to myself, Gary!
Maybe Gary is skipping school. It's been months since the last time Jimmy saw him.
What'd you do that for?
Oh, I'm sorry, Psycho. Did I hit your boyfriend?
Yeah, Psycho, you gonna try to kick our asses now?
And with that, the jocks declared open war on the guy that has already taken on 3 different cliques in one.
It's that pompous-ass Patrick. He's bad-mouthing me all around the staff room.
Why?
He keeps calling me a drunk.
This game makes Hattrick out to be the villain in this situation, even though he's just concerned about a teacher being drunk on the job in front of students. The worst thing Hattrick does is sell early test prints. He's a saint compared to the rest of the people in this school.
I like to show that they massively underestimated the force that they were dealing with, and then really give them something to complain about.
The treacherous Machiavel. I love it.
Good. Me too.
Jimmy follows Hattrick home, then smashes his property up at night, just to threaten him and show him that he shouldn't mess with Galloway. So let's just consider this the third innocent little hate crime in the game. The nerds won't help Jimmy take over the jocks, so he has to first take over the nerds by getting to Ernest. The nerds have transformed an entire chunk of property outside the school observatory into an armed compound where they shoot fireworks and spud cannons at anyone who enters. There's a reason every school shooter comes out of this clique.
Don't get fresh with your homies.
Can you please talk normally?
This is my normal style of rapping, bro.
Jimmy is too white for this type of awkward, misunderstood racism. The jocks are going to be at the carnival's funhouse tonight. This place would have been sued into bankruptcy if this is normal working order, since it's more like an obstacle course that is designed to harm anyone making their way through it.
I need some naughty pictures of that Mandy girl.
Alright, how about a mission where you take photos of an underage girl in the shower for a pervert who then spreads them around school? Don't mind if we do, said Rockstar.
The kind of pictures that could land me in jail or worse?
Well, you're a minor, so you wouldn't go to jail. But the larger issue is that the prospect of punishment is the only thing making Jimmy reluctant, and not the ethics of taking creep shots.
So go and collect all the dirty laundry from the, girls' dorm.
The gym teacher, after being caught coming out of a sex shop, asked Jimmy to collect laundry from the girls' dorm, which happens to be their underwear. Animal House wasn't as controversial as this game had the potential to be, and that also featured date rape.
I'm about to die for them!
Just go fix the defense system and I'll take care of the goons.
Come on, you wimps! We're coming to get
out
you, sickos!
The yelling during the cutscene made it seem like the jocks were just outside the observatory and ready to break down the door. But they're all the way across the observatory grounds when Jimmy has to defend against them with a spud gun. Just how many people can be on Bulworth Academy's football team? And why does it seem like they play all year? This is well past football season, which typically ends in November. Jimmy consoles Mandy when she's feeling down and humiliated by the photos spread all over town of her. Photos Jimmy took, that he never feels bad about and never admits to. I'm used to Rockstar protagonists having degrees of hypocrisy when it comes to how they're portrayed as the lesser evil, but Jimmy is without a doubt the worst person in this school, and is convinced he's doing everyone a favor. I couldn't help but notice all the posters don't reflect the photos Jimmy took of her. These are close-ups and she's staring in shock at the photographer, which would mean she would know that Jimmy took the photos.
In my spare time, I produce certain chemical compounds with certain properties. I need some of them delivered to my customers around town.
Jimmy, we need to cook. Mr. Watts, the chemistry teacher, wants Jimmy to deliver substances he made to customers around town. The game does make the scenario into a bit of a joke by revealing that it's hair growth formula at the end, but considering this game has already depicted sexual assault and violation of privacy, I don't see why they would obfuscate when it comes to drugs. Plus, selling non-FDA regulated and approved pharmaceuticals you made inside a school would still be illegal. Ernest wants to finally go after the jocks by first getting their hands on the school mascot costume, so Jimmy leads him to the pool to knock him out and take it, while the nerds distract the jocks. But that would only mean the theft of the costume would be known, so showing up to the game wearing it as a disguise wouldn't work. Gluing jocks to the bench and pissing in their Gatorade is one thing, but planting a rigged ball that would send someone to the hospital after it explodes in their face is resorting to terrorism. The whole ordeal ends with Jimmy assaulting the football players during the game with explosive footballs in front of a crowd. The faculty is fine with this apparently. Also, where is the opposing team? It's just Jimmy and the Bulworth players out on the field.
Well, what about Gary? Gary? Forget about that twerp.
Honestly, there isn't any reason to be concerned with him. He hasn't shown up in ages. I would have just assumed his family moved or he dropped out.
Forget the school. The whole town should know about you. You're like the mayor.
You should leave your mark on City Hall!
Yeah.
As we all know, painting graffiti on some walls will lead to entire towns respecting you and allowing you to run the show.
The library is full of rats! And I got my pre-med test next week, amigo! You're such a lame...
Some king you turned out to be.
How can you blame rats in the library on Jimmy? Running a social clique doesn't make him an exterminator. This is actually a job for the faculty to deal with. Do they not practice fire drills in this school? The gymnasium is burning and the students are not being evacuated. And the coach blames Jimmy for the fire, but then lets him run inside to rescue students trapped by the flames, even pointing out where Jimmy could find the fire extinguisher. After this, you can still take gym class, since none of it burns down. And I didn't see a single fire truck ever show up to put it out. Johnny has gone missing and the greasers blame Jimmy for his disappearance. But it turns out Johnny was institutionalized in the local asylum by the townies, since being emotional over your girlfriend cheating on you can get you committed based on the words of random teenagers around town. So Jimmy has to break him out by dressing as an orderly, which all the real orderlies fall for despite Jimmy being 15 years old.
Someone stole our boxing trophies, buddy. They were heirlooms.
Someone stole all the rich kids' boxing trophies, and of course they blame Jimmy, which is a bit hypocritical since they denied the trophy he won and tried to steal one from him, but now this is apparently a great offense. But they settle for blaming the greasers, and the greasers claim it wasn't them and Johnny says Jimmy isn't their friend anymore, even though Jimmy just broke the guy out of an asylum.
What are you looking at?
Nothing.
Well, it looks like you're looking at me, scumbag.
Like I said, nothing. Oh, come on, I don't want to fight you. My name's Jimmy.
Zoe.
And that's how you meet new people.
I would love to teach that guy a lesson. He bullies everyone.
You know, he goes jogging every day and regularly uses the porta potties in the park.
Why do you know the gym teacher's public restroom habits? I know the coach is a perv who got you expelled, but that would never lead me to timing people in the porta potty.
If we could catch him in one on top of a hill, then Mr. Burton could have a really interesting time in it.
Yeah, but they're all chained together. We'll need to get some bolt cutters.
Have you ever planned a criminal assault with a total stranger you've known for less than a minute? This plan only needed bolt cutters to unchain a porta potty. Not stated, but also needed were a lawnmower to push it off, and for the section of safety railing right behind it to be mysteriously missing.
They did everything. Put Johnny Vincent in the home, let the rats out of the library, everything, including your trophies.
Why?
Because I listened to Gary.
At the dock, Jimmy discovers that the townies were responsible for the rats and stole the trophies as well. Then he jumps to the conclusion that the townies disrupting the school is due to Gary, even though he's seen no connection as of yet. I have the suspicion that the teachers in Bully think they're assigning missions to a GTA protagonist instead of a minor who is supposed to be under their care. Why else would you enlist a student to help break your boyfriend out of an asylum? So is Mr. Galloway going to return to work at the school despite openly drinking in front of students and being committed for mental illness?
Well, you'll have to pursue your comedic talents elsewhere, boy. Bullworth is not for you.
With the amount of blackmail Jimmy has on the staff of the school, expelling him should be impossible. I threatened to go to the press over any number of the teachers.
Gary Smith is the next head of this school. He's responsible, courteous, and not afraid of being an unpopular leader.
Has Gary even come to class this school year? Not exactly future headmaster material. With his name in the dirt and expelled from school, the only person Jimmy can turn to for help taking on the townies is Russell, who promptly kills himself by running his motorcycle through a barricade that explodes.
I've got to talk to that Edgar kid.
I don't think he wants to talk to you.
I don't recall anyone mentioning the leader of the townies, but somehow Jimmy knows the guy's name is Edgar. Maybe the townies were planning some true anarchy by taking over the power station and chemical plant, or maybe it's just stupid and makes no sense why teenagers can seize control of two very dangerous pieces of infrastructure, and no one seemed to care.
I hate that school. My parents couldn't afford to send me there, and now I'm stuck in this dump of a town.
Is there no public school in this town for non-Bullworth students to attend? They just get expelled and form gangs?
Gary said we make them all pay.
You were pissed off at the school for expelling all of you, so you targeted the students who had nothing to do with your expulsion. And just how many students have been expelled from Bullworth? The townies make up a sizable group that would be a huge part of the student body.
Come on. You're gonna help me make him pay for his lies.
I mean, I get nothing out of this exchange, but sure, you beat me in a fight, so I guess I gotta do what you say.
Don't be ridiculous! Haven't you heard?
Heard what, my love?
The school has broken out into a massive fight. Every gang and faction is fighting each other.
Sounds like a job for the police if the school is rioting. I'm weirdly interested in seeing how Bullworth would handle an actual school shooting.
I'm gonna need some serious backup. Where's Russell? Where's your buddy Edgar?
Russell has been holed up in the Wonder Meat slaughterhouse, hiding from the cops.
Before he can stop the riot, Jimmy has to rescue Russell from the meatpacking plant where he's surrounded by police, who should probably be stopping that school riot right about now. Gary instigated a full-blown riot at the school by apparently just whispering in people's ears and lying. Why did he wait so long? He could have done this ages ago. Why even involve the townies? That accomplished nothing. So, all these kids are going to be expelled and sent to juvie after this, right? Losing one weapon in a cutscene means you lose all of your weapons, and in this case, your NPC helper Russell as well.
Your attention, please. Jimmy is complete human trash.
Gary, you little bitch! Come out!
James, I've been waiting.
Gary gets on the intercom to badmouth Jimmy, but then he's standing on the stairs in front of him a second later.
You are sad, man!
I might be sad, but I run your world, moron! And don't you forget it! You did all my dirty work for me, Hopkins. You're like a puppet, only dumber!
I never once recognized any semblance of thought in Gary's scheme for taking over the school. First he makes nice with Jimmy and has him do a few random pranks here and there, then picks a fight between him and Russell to which the conclusion doesn't really matter, then does nothing for the rest of the school year until just before summer when he convinces the dropouts in town to go after the cliques in school who all blame Jimmy, then gets Jimmy expelled, which will somehow allow Gary to take control of the school for like a month before they have to leave for summer vacation. Multiple things should probably kill Jimmy here, such as Gary tossing bricks at him as he balances on a pipe, dumping a load of bricks on his face as he climbs up a ladder, and then falling off the roof and through a plate glass ceiling into the headmaster's office.
Smith! I heard the whole thing! You're expelled!
You did? How? They were up on top of the bell tower and you were inside this building several floors down when Gary admitted to all that. Jimmy is no longer expelled and kisses Zoe in front of all the other students who are just rioting and suffer no repercussions. This has to be a charter school.
I should have stopped taking those pills ages ago.
Hey, it's the end of the video. You made it through another one. Can't be easy listening to a monotone like mine drone on about video games. But if you did, why not consider liking the video or subscribing to the channel? Maybe watch a few older videos that are just as good if not better. I've only gotten more pretentious over time after all. You can also vote in the comments for which of these two games you want to see sent next. And if you really like my content, you can check out my Patreon, where you can watch exclusive Sin videos on classic old games and DLC, such as Grand Theft Auto 3, Vice City, and most recently, Parasite Eve. There will be a half-off discount for the next few days. Thanks for watching, everyone. But a special thanks to patrons Amezare, Stepan Kat Sinek, Hokkaido Kamui, Vanilla Pixel, Brainwayne, Chris, Alexander Q. Cortez, Ben, Roman Are You Sleeping, Nervous Nelly, Xavier Destalis, Notorious SKP, Max Headroom, DJ Nelson, Azaneth the Succubus, Musical Pumpkin, Castlemania, Zinro, Michelle C., Yaroslav Golubev, Dennis O'Brien, Malrose, Jake B., Donald Talbot, Montezuma, Aaron Hines, Sky is Under, PK Reed, Eric Kisser, Shadow Wolf Gaming, Urpel Jaeger, Church Quiones, S. Venus, Mario Neto, Ben Hottie, Biohazard, Director Anarchy, and Charmsy.